Dr. Ron Paul, in your book from 2011, Liberty Defined, 50 Essential Issues That Affect Our Freedom, you write that so-called moderate politicians who compromise and seek bipartisanship are the most dangerous among the entire crew in Washington. Compromise is too often synonymous with selling out, but it sounds a lot better.
It sure does. Moderation always sounds good and people want it. And we all want to feel moderate, that we're reasonable people. So it does sell in politics. But there's a difference between moderation, where you sacrifice something you believe, and cooperating with somebody else who might have a disagreement, but you come together and you build a coalition. For instance, I did quite well with honest, progressive Democrats. Take a Dennis Kucinich. I did real well with him. Because, we agreed on a lot and we disagreed on a few things. We didn't concentrate on what we disagreed on, but on the things we agreed on, on civil liberties and privacy and trade arguments and war. And he and I got along very well, and like a Ralph Nader, I get along quite well with him, but he doesn't have to sacrifice and I don't. But if in the conventional definition of moderation is that if I want to be a true free market person, what I have to do is give up a little bit of free market in order to get incorporate with somebody else. So I see giving up on the principle of, say, non-aggression on foreign policy and also on the protection of civil liberties. We'll have a smaller NSA, and we'll have a little bit of government intervention. We'll have a little bit of welfareism, and we'll have the president fight little wars but not big wars. That's why I think it's so dangerous, because you endorse the principle 100%. And I think that is wrong. So you find other people where you can come together and you build coalitions. And I think that's where the answer will be found, to the stalemate in Washington.
So when you see what's going on right now, the House, the Senate, the President, and they all want to work together, but nothing seems to be getting done.
I'm not sure they want to work together, because they work together. Matter of fact, both parties agree on the big issues. They don't have any disagreement. But they don't want to work together if they're looking for power. Power is a real struggle. People want to have the power and they want to take care of their friends. So that's a very real issue. So I think the problem in Washington right now is that it's more difficult to continue to spend. Conservatives like to spend on some military-industrial project that's probably totally unnecessary. Democrats want to spend on some welfare program conservatives don't like. Well, when we were very wealthy and the debt wasn't outrageous and we didn't have the problems that we have where we see bankruptcies of cities and towns and states, it was endless. But that has ended, and they're not admitting that the country's bankrupt. So therefore, they're just fighting over a pie that keeps shrinking and shrinking. And this is the real problem. But on the big issues, the parties come together on going to war, let the presidents do it. On NSA, they both like NSA. On an IRS, yes, they argue politically about the IRS. Neither party's going to get rid of the IRS like I'd like to do. So, but the very big issues, they're very much together. When it comes to some of the things on civil liberties like NSA, were the Republicans any better than the Democrats? No, they got along together on this, and this is why I think that we won't admit that not only is the financially bankrupt, but our foreign policy is bankrupt too, because the American people are sick and tired of it. And all you have to do is look at these last 10 years, look at Afghanistan, the results in Iraq, and the mess we're creating in Ukraine. It gets on and on. The American people know it, and they're saying, why don't we come home, and yet both parties want to keep all that intervention going.
And back to Liberty Defined, the ethos of Washington is that the job of the elected politician is to serve the company that employs them, and that company is government. They are told that they should serve the system or get another job. Very few new politicians can reject this logic and rationale.
Yeah, and I've helped a lot of individuals get into Congress. As being an incumbent, you have a little bit of ability to help. For the most part, most of them didn't do well after they got there. Some have done exceptionally well in recent years. But I've always said that I can tell within a week or so how they're going to go, because the member arrives, he gave one story back at home, he got the support of conservative libertarians, limited government, and then all of a sudden they get in the atmosphere of, oh, I have to get on this committee, you know, and the big pressure is in Washington. To get ahead, you got to go along, and you have to be a team player. That's the ultimate argument they use. Are you going to be a team player? Sacrifice your principles, sacrifice everything you promised back at home, because you got to be a team player. And besides, you know, you could get kicked off your committee, which has happened. You can get kicked off your committee. And also, they'll say, we'll strike the money from your district deliberately, just line item veto your district, which has happened to me. So it is a vicious game they play in order for you to toe the line. And most people cave to a large degree, but I would say there's a couple dozen right now that are doing a pretty good job of not jumping in and being part of the system.
Who are some
I'm
of
not
those
going to name the names because I might forget somebody, but there's certainly the individuals that I've helped in the past, and it won't be hard to find out when there's a vote of 400 to 5. Go look at the 5 votes, or if there's 2, there were quite a few votes. Dennis Kucinich and I would be the only 2 individuals voting against some needless intervention someplace where they're getting ready to start another war. Now you can find out who the people are that will stick to it and won't kowtow and do exactly as the leadership tells you to do. You know, there was one time an individual was voting sort of with the rebels. You know, we were trying to change things, and there'd be 4, 5, or 6 of us. And he was voting with us, and all of a sudden his voting pattern changed. And I went up to him and I says, "Hey, you used to vote with me on this. Why aren't you doing this?" He says, "Oh, I'm in leadership now." He was appointed to something, you know, like in a whip team or something like that. He says, "I'm part of the leadership." So he becomes leaderless, you know. I mean, he himself leads nothing. He becomes a follower by joining leadership.
Did you ever get offered anything?
No, I don't think so.
Was it uncomfortable to be you in the Republican caucus?
No, actually, you know, on a social, personal basis, I probably have deceived myself a little bit, because I always thought it was fine, because there was not the hostility. Nobody argued and fussed, and they left me alone. They knew they weren't going to change my views. So they didn't come and say, do this, do this, do this. We need you, we need you. It was just, he has his mind made up. We know the lobbyists never bothered me either. So the leadership knew where I stood. But they loved to have me when I was agreeing with them, because they knew it was based on a firm principle, the Constitution, and they were delighted to have me on their side under those circumstances.
This is from your book in 1991, the Ron Paul Money Book. And this is again 1991. And here's what you write. "The Cashless Society is the IRS's dream. Total knowledge of and control over the finances of every single American."
We're still moving in that direction. Not a lot of people use cash anymore. Now, a lot of it is out of convenience, and people get, you know, sucked into this. And I have to admit that when I see it, you know, I used to worry about somebody in front of the line that was going to use a credit card. Today, you can pay with a credit card faster than you can pay with cash. You know, they fumble around with the cash and getting change and all. They slip that card. Oh, you don't even have to sign. Under $50, you don't have to. So it's so tempting. But it is also a record. It's a record that's kept. The government knows what happens. They know where you go. But it's also financial information. Government has this information, and it's connected to the big the companies that collect information. But there's a commercial value to this too. But governments, I had a debate probably back before that, I think it was in the 80s, with another person who firmly believed in it. His whole motivation was, we can raise more money for the government. Of course, that's not my goal. My goal in life is to have a government defend individual liberty, not to have more money. This is one reason why I have an argument with the supply-siders, who are pretty good on most issues and on taxes and things. They argue low tax rate, it's fine. But their argument is, if you lower the rate, business will pick up and the government gets more money. Well, that's fine. Lower the rates, business pick up, but reduce the